Welcome back from me, Tim Cable, to the Rock and Blues Experience. And coming up on this edition of the show, I'm joined by Dave Ellefson and Jeff Scott Soto to talk about their exceptionally good new album. It is called Unbreakable, which has just been released. And as well as delving into this project, which is now 2 albums old and primed for more. We're also going to be talking about Dave's performance at Ozzy's final show just weeks ago. And we will also touch on Megadeth, what the current state of play is there with the band recording, of course, a final album and preparing for this goodbye global tour. What hope exists then, if any, of the 2 Daves appearing on stage for a last hurrah? Now, just a reminder, you can catch up with all of the latest content on the website at www.therockandbluesexperience.com, on YouTube and Facebook, as well as every other social media channel. And if you are stopping by today for the first time in a while, we've got some great new features that have been recently published. Damon Johnson was last up from Lynyrd Skynyrd, of course. He joined me. We look back on his career from the very early days with Brother Kane, who, by the way, he revealed are releasing a new album in November, and through Alice Cooper, the Damn Yankees, Thin Lizzy, and of course, Black Star Riders. And if you are a Lynyrd Skynyrd fan, then check out the show with Johnny Van Zant and Ricky Medlock, which was also added recently, and Luke Morley as well of Thunder, who is heading out on a solo tour now to promote his really good solo album. This is called Walking on Water. If you've not heard it, do give it a listen. So, plenty out there to entertain you as we move from summer into fall season. And so back to Dave Ellefson and Jeff Scott Soto, who together have delivered us one of the best hard rock albums this year in Unbreakable. I caught up with both last week to look at the album and the myriad of other things that are going on in their respective lives and careers. Indeed, you may well have seen Dave along with others, including Jeff Young, at the Whiskey this last weekend with the Kings of the Thrash. In order to get to where you are with this album, I just want to go back to the beginning almost and talk about the American dream. Right, because if you look back to the early 80s, when both of you guys were beginning your journeys in music, anyone watching the stories develop from outside began, yeah, that's why I want to go to America. Yeah. They have the dream. And you, Dave, a couple of days after you graduate, you get in a car, you got 3 friends, and you drive to Hollywood.
Right.
And you check it in and you move in and, hey, presto, you're living downstairs from Dave Mustaine. And then this is that seed. These things don't happen anywhere else. And right. Jeff, as an 18-year-old, you've just been watching a bit of MTV, being raised management and a story about, a potential gig there. So you just drop a cassette in the post and, hey, presto, the phone rings and you've got a gig. These things don't happen anywhere else apart from in America.
Well, I beg to differ. Especially in the UK. There was the new wave of the British metal scene it certainly, I've seen enough documentaries that they have even stranger and more obscure startup stories than, David's story is fantastic because he met Mustaine right when Mustaine was desperate. He was sad. He was let go from the other band, etc. And he knew that he was already harnessing that mentality of, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show them. I'm going to prove something. And those guys, they created their own sound, their own era and genre of music, and it's fantastic. And as we were saying at the pre-roll before we started discussing, you hear those elements of what David's contribution was to Megadeth as much as you hear my contributions to what I did back in the day and all the way through. But it doesn't sound like something. These songs don't sound like Megadeth songs. These songs don't sound like Yngwie or Sons of Apollo songs. They sound like us, and that
Yeah, yeah.
was that's where the magic is. It was we didn't think about it. We didn't say we have to sound like this. We have to go for this. We have to try this. It just kind of happened. And I was telling Tim before you signed on, David, that the organic response, the enthusiasm you guys would give me when I would send in the tracks after I finished something, it gave me that incentive to just keep going, just keep pushing and reaching and getting something a little heavier and stronger than we already have or already had done.
Just so you know, Tim, when Jeff would send his vocal tracks back, if you read the comments under our videos on YouTube, that's what me and Andy were like, dude, this is rad, awesome, oh my God, this is great, right? Hail, hail, right? So that's what we felt like when he sent it back. One of my favorite comments was on the new video Vengeance with Tim Ripper Owens. You know, one guy
Yeah.
goes, he goes, he goes, when is it ever that Tim Ripper Owens is the second best singer? Right? Because and I thought that was such a great
That's
compliment,
awesome.
such a great compliment to Jeff. Just really, you know, commandeering the ship and giving it the signature sound. And I'll agree with what you just said, Jeff. I think the hardest thing for any artist is to have your own sound. You know, I always say when you hear Adele, you know it's her. You hear Kenny G, you know it's her. When you hear Ariana Grande, when you hear Metallica, when you hear Pantera, you know that is truly the hallmark of an artist, right? You know, you walk into galleries and people go, "Oh, Rembrandt, whatever," you know. And I'm not an art guy in that sense, but you know, they all have it, right? And to have that by album two with Megadeth, I think we found it by Peace Sells, album two. So I find album two is kind of that defining mark, you know. But you've
Kind
got
of
to
the
go,
step up, yeah.
yeah, you got to go through the process. And to tap on what you started there, you know, Tim, it's funny you say go to America. For us, it was like, dude, we got to get to Europe because
Exactly.
once you get to Europe and plant the flag, you know, it's my adage I've used for years. You'll never be a hometown hero until you're a hero over there, somewhere else, you know. And I think for our scene, and Metallica was first to market, you know, in our world, but you know, because Lars was Danish, so he knew
Yeah.
they had to get over there. You know, I guess to some degree, you know, Yngwie came here pursuing the American dream through Mike Varney, you know, brought him over. So there was definitely this exchange. Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, these guys talk in their documentaries about how important it was to get to America. Like, the gold is over there, you know, and for us, it was like, you know, because we all come from basically some probably kind of a European, certainly an international history, all of us here in America. None of us are native, you know, here. We're all immigrants here, you know. And so for us, it was kind of like going back to our, you know, kind of motherland, fatherland, get back to Germany, England, Scandinavia. You know what I mean? If we can
Hey,
get back there.
maybe it was because when you did it, you had a lot of sunshine. When we did it, it was always raining over it. You had the sun.
You know, it's an artist like even like Jimi Hendrix was so influential in that because he couldn't land anything really here in the U.S. His mark started in England. His mark started in Europe. So for young rock musicians that were obviously influenced by Jimmy, that was kind of the motherland in terms of music. And it seemed like the UK, especially during that time, were far more open-minded and more,
Yeah.
they just wanted something new and fresh. And they allowed that to happen. And then all of a sudden, hang on, why is that happening there and not here? And that, I think that kind of helped flourish Jimmy here in the U.S. and then opened up a whole new genre. And basically he was a trailblazer, you know, and everybody followed suit from that. But it started in England for him. So, you know, much to what David is saying, that's our goal is to be able to conquer that territory, those lands as well, as much as the English bands and the European bands wanted to conquer America. It's kind of funny.
Grief. Let me tell you, the grief that bands over here used to get in the early 80s. I remember when Def Leppard, right?
I was just going to say them, yeah.
Oh my God. It was like, they've sold out. They've gone, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they basically became, you know, it's interesting with them because they basically became like this American band. They're British, of course, but they wore the British flag proudly, which we Americans loved. Which is funny
Yeah.
because we left England to come here, and all of a sudden we're hailing the flag. And same with Maiden, the Trooper. Like this. There was this thing about that, and it's funny as Motley and Def Leppard did that big stadium tour here a couple years ago in America. You kind of put it together. You realize, Def Leppard didn't tour very much in at least in Europe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these bands, it really is. It's things of legend. If we could just get over there, like the Beatles, once they got to America, oh god, that was game over.
And
So
Yeah,
Zeppelin
that's
were the
funny.
same.
it's just
America embraced Zeppelin so much that it almost feels like they were an American treasure, even though they weren't from here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just one of those
yeah.
things.
Your vocals, right? I just want to talk about the influences, and your attention was initially spiked or drawn by Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five. Now, your parents are
Yep.
from Puerto Rico. You grew up in Brooklyn in the '70s. A lot of salsa music around there at the time. What were they called? The Fania All Stars were huge.
Oh my God, you've
around
done your
then.
work.
And it was your brother, though, wasn't it? It was Joey that got you onto the path of righteousness, Toto,
Yes.
Journey, and Styx. Before that, graduation to Van Halen Priest. But it was Michael Jackson that initially spiked the interest.
It was Michael Jackson and Tom Jones. I can't leave Tom out
Tom
because
Jones.
Sir Tom. When I was a kid, I remember being 6 or 7 years old, standing on a chair with the butt end of a butter knife, singing Delilah, because I loved the way his stature. He just seemed confident. I loved how strong his voice was, and as a kid, I was emulating even that. Then I was emulating that. Michael was my. It was closer to my age, so it was watching a child star, and I was a child myself, and I was kind of following in that footstep of wanting to be what he was. But Tom Jones was the man. But when you think of influence and the ladies' man, all of the above, even as a kid, without even knowing I was interested in girls yet, that it appeals so much to me of what he was doing and how he did it back in those days.
It is amazing, isn't it, how often a twist of fate proves to be a key in life. And
Absolutely.
a singing debut for you. You're 12, you got a band at school, the singer can't make it. You moved on from the trumpet and the keyboard, and you take center stage, and that was it. It was then.
Yeah.
So you just sitting there thinking, well, what have happened if that guy had turned up?
Yeah.
But that was it.
It's another one of those stories that it certainly was kind of a twist of fate, so to speak. I mean, I always wanted to be the frontman, but everybody would always look at me as the kid. There's no way the kid is going to be able to front. He doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the stature yet, or even the maturity. And I proved them wrong by just by choice, by chance. We have to move on. We have to continue. Otherwise, we have to cancel the gig. So. And I've had so many of those moments in my life. Even my first show with Journey as their singer, we had a 10-minute sound check, no rehearsal. It was just, the songs, yes, and they trusted me, and we went. My first night in front of 22,000 people was a 10-minute sound check. So it's one of those situations where I love stepping up and proving myself. I love thriving from situations that most might cower from.
And that first song, age 14, Whisper in My Ear.
Oh my God! Well, we didn't perform that live. The first song I ever sang live was "Fooled Around and Fell in Love" from Mickey Thomas, of course, Alvin Bishop, but Mickey Thomas singing it, and I mean, what a dream it was. I told this story many years later. It was probably a few years ago, but many years from the time I sang this song for the first time. I told this story at an event that Mickey was singing at, and then I brought him out. We did "Fooled Around and Fell in Love" together. So it went full circle. It was fantastic.
So, Dave, how was it being based in LA, right? And looking at the bands that you loved listening to and everything else growing up from, I looked at your favorite albums, everything from Desolation Boulevard, Candy-O by the Cars and Boston's debut. How did you not get sucked into that scene at the time? Yeah, Van Halen were huge, Crew were up and coming, and Rat were there, and Doc, and it seemed the pathway to fame and fortune was to follow that. So why did you guys want to be different?
So you're exactly right. When I was on the farm in Minnesota where I grew up, my daughters had bands and we were out gigging. And because we were all young, we always had to have like a sound man who was like, drinking age was 19. So as long as our sound man or our light man was 19, we could get into the bars and the ballrooms, you know. But, you know, my dad dedicated a shed on our farm, you know, just we insulated it, put a furnace in it so we could rehearse. He helped me buy a PA and, you know, basically, you know, the Casa de Ellefson was the home base for all my bands, you know, and I was the guy on the phone with the agents and, you know, doing the showcasing and booking and getting promo kits. And, you know, so it's kind of, I was just kind of wired that way. I studied the craft of show business as much as I studied the craft of playing music, writing songs and all that kind of stuff. I understood what it was, and Kiss were my heroes. You know, they were my Beatles. They showed me what it was. So by the time I got to LA, you know, really Ozzy was getting his musicians out of LA. And, you know, that introduced us to Quiet Riot through Randy Rhoads and Rudy Sarzo. Jakey Lee introduced us to Rats and Rough Cuts and Brad Gillis. We knew of Night Ranger, who were, you know, from up in the Bay Area. So and then Motley came on the scene. And so by the time I got there, all these sort of MTV heroes of mine, you know, Eddie Van Halen, Gene and Paul from Kiss, all these guys were now my neighbors. They were living up in the hills, right up the street from me, you know. And it's that sobering moment where you go from being the fan, you know, they're sort of a pin up on your wall when you're just starting out, to now they're literally right up the street. You know, they're your neighbors. And you know, and I'm very fortunate I met Dave. You know, I didn't know who Dave was. Metallica's record had not come out yet. They were a buzz for sure. You know, they were our scene was the next thing up to bat after sort of the hair metal thing of the Sunset Strip that was going on when I got there. But, you know, to meet Dave and for, you know, he really studied Lars. I mean, Lars is the guy, you know, he's the guy that he is the linchpin by which everything happened in our scene, you know. And Dave really mentored under him. He'd always mention, well, Lars would do this and Lars would do that. Da, da, da. So Dave was paying attention. And so we kind of just carbon copied a lot of that. But, you know, Dave was very strong in his convictions. He very much had a plan and a vision of how to do things, certainly how not to do things, and how not to do things, which is pretty much how everyone else was doing it. You know, when you'd see, you know, when other bands would have to go up Laurel Canyon and nail handbills, you know, Pretty Boy Floyd and, you know, Jet Boy and, you know, even Poison or whoever, you know, handing handbills, you know, down to the Sunset Strip, sort of leading people to the clubs. First thing Dave said, he goes, "We're not playing any of those clubs in LA." And I was shocked. It's like, what do you mean we're not going to play? He's like, "This is why I moved here." And he said, "Dude, it's San Francisco. That's where it's at." And that was where his, you know, his star had been rising in his Metallica days. And he was right. We debuted up there to sold out shows. And so he knew, you know, he knew to go where his audience was. And that was, you know, through his Metallica path. And, you know, that's what diverted me. And even in LA, when we played LA, we'd play the Country Club out in Reseda. We'd play the Balboa Theater. You know, we played these, know, kind of like punk rock clubs and theaters. We did not play the Sunset Strip. We played a lot of these outlying areas, which had great fan bases. You know, it's kind of more of a, you know, I mean, we're creating thrash metal. I guess it wasn't called thrash metal then, but you know, this punk metal crossover thing that became thrash metal. You know, Suicidal Tendencies were part of this scene. They were very, you know, Venice Beach, you know, skateboard punk rock, that whole thing. So, you know, we were kind of landing between hair metal and Black Flag and, you know, Fear and, you know, in that where there's like this channel between all of that. And that's where we, you know, kind of serendipitously landed. So, you know, it's just interesting how the path goes, and that's what saved me from getting sucked down into could
He's
have
Fan
been
Big's
an awesome.
Vortex.
Yeah, and also ran. I wonder whatever happened to David Ellefson. He moved out to Hollywood. We've never heard from him again.
Yeah.
Join a Mooney cult. I don't know. There are 20,000 things you could fall into out in L.A. Most of them not good. So I'm forever thankful that. And quite honestly, look, I just followed my instincts. At age 16, I had this feeling. I was rehearsing with my band in the shed on the farm, and I just like, I got to get to LA. I mean, it was such a conviction. It's like, just like I got to go to the store and get some milk. It was one of those, like, I got to go now. You know what I mean? And it was one of those, like, I got to get to LA, like now, like I'm done now. Let's go. And I just followed that. And, the good Lord above laid the crumbs out. I followed the path, and it led to 1736 North Sycamore, and that's where Dave somehow landed after Metallica. And it was just meant to be. You can't plan this shit. It's just, you look back
I'm
on it, and it's
surprised,
kind of,
David. I'm
thankful.
surprised you guys never used that address as a title of an album, because that's
Oh,
really where it all started from. It would
great
have
Yeah,
been a great.
title.
And people were like, "What does that mean? What does it stand for?" I mean, it's like, that's where it all started.
that's a
That's
great idea. I
actually
tell
a
you what,
great album
that's a
title.
great idea. Yeah, that'll be it with the picture of the apartment. I'll tell you what, I'll use
The
that
box set
only if you and I can do "Fooled Around and Fell in Love" by Alvin Bishop, because that is a fucking great song. That is an awesome song, and it's funny.
with
I just
Ripper
want to weigh in
Owens.
too. I too was a Michael Jackson fan because growing up in America, there was Sonny and Cher, there was Donnie and Marie Osmond, there was Hee Haw. There were these primetime television shows that we just watched, and then late at night was the midnight special and things. But these music shows, I watched all of them. I didn't care what style of music it was, because it just, showbiz just called to me, probably like it did to you, Jeff.
Yeah.
And look, the Jackson Five. You go to the Motown Museum now in Detroit, and they talk Berry Gordy, how he, Linda, Diana Ross brought them into to Berry Gordy, and he saw clearly Michael was the star, and how he sort of put that thing together. And you really realize, I probably, for guys like Jeff and I, getting in a band was like, we're going to be bros forever. We'll take over the world. Da, 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 da. Then you get into business, you realize, yeah, that ain't what this is at all. This is a cutthroat. Me, you think your tribe is against that tribe until your tribe turns against each other.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
you learn all this shit as you're growing up in the business.
So, Jeff, your voice, right, has been on what, close to 100, probably more than 100 albums now since
I think
that
it might be
debut.
over by now. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of disgusting. Actually, I'm a musical whore.
but whichever way you look at it's an incredible amount of output, and there's been pretty much every vocal style you can think of. And the beauty is you keep discovering things, or I keep discovering things that you did, which you might have missed. Yeah. I mean, I was listening to the very, very good Love Parade, right,
Thank you.
earlier on, which was fantastic. And you think, oh, how did I miss this? How do you keep the quality control? Right, because you know what your strength is, and you don't want to lend it to something that isn't worthy of the talent.
Well, I attested to two things. Obviously, my diversity comes from so many influences and inspirations, and so the fact that I'm so, my DNA, the bloodline of the music that I love is basically, it equals the colors of the rainbow. There's no black and white. There's no blinders, no barriers, no walls. Having a band like Queen as one of my biggest influences, clearly that was my goal. That was my bar. When you have a singer like Freddie who was able to conquer every style that was put in front of him, and then some. He did things, novelty songs, nostalgic songs, metal, opera, blues, jazz, disco. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
Queen, they were the only one band out there that were the jack of all trades and master of them as well. And that was my inspiration. That was my aspiration. I didn't want to be a one-trick pony. I didn't want to be just a metal guy or just a ballads guy. I wanted to be all of the above. I've titled some of my solo albums after that, because when somebody asks why did you take a rock thing and a disco thing and this, that, and the other and put them all on one record? Like, it gets lost in the translation when you think about it. And it's like, yeah, that's actually a good way to describe that particular record. The same as my last solo record. How do you describe Jeff Scott Soto? Well, it's complicated. I take those little things, those aspirations throughout my entire musical life and journey in this business, and it makes me want to strive to try and do things that challenge me, but also I get to actually bring out some of the influences that you wouldn't normally expect of me.
Sure.
And that's always been my drive. My ambition is to do things that maybe other singers or other artists might not want to do or would try to do, because music is that everlasting rainbow of colors that you should always be aspiring to
Sure.
take a little bite of, take a bite of the rainbow, so to speak.
So you two were introduced via Albatrello, and coming up to date, you're coming together as a creative force. Was all very organic. It was without fuss. You've been working on the music, Dave, and Andy suggested that you get Jeff involved. You initially get dropped a couple of files, and then you're just thinking, why don't we just do this together? Why don't we just get together? So
I give David the full credit.
Well.
Yeah, I give David that full credit, because we were just, as we were going along with song after song, we got to the point where we had like 13, 14, maybe even 15 songs, because we weren't even thinking about it. We were just doing them and just kept churning them out initially without knowing where they were going to land. If David was going to use for one of his other projects or give it to another artist, etc. He was just kind of cataloging a lot of songs. And then he realized, hang on a second, this is something special. This isn't something that we can give to somebody else for them to recreate. This is something that we've actually built kind of a sound, kind of the way, we were talking about Dave and David back in the day. We kind of built a sound that sounds like us. And David came to me and said, I know you've got a billion other things that you're working on and a lot of albums out there, but I think we should put this out, and it should be a collaboration between the two of us in terms of, instead of a new band name, it's us. It's our stamp. And this is what turned out of a situation where we weren't even trying to actually put together. It just kind of happened. And I think even more of the same can happen with Unbreakable, with this new record.
Yeah, I mean, technically,
go on.
I was one of Jeff's clients. I said, it's like we have a thing, Hair Club for Men. Hair Club for Men, the owner. I'm not just a client; I'm also a member. So, and then we started it, and just exactly as Jeff said. And when he and I were growing up here, there were a couple of really great records. Pat Thrall and Glenn Hughes did a record called Hughes Thrall. Brad Whitford and Derek St. Holmes, Nugent Aerosmith. So they did this, Whitford St. Holmes, and I love those records. They were so cool. Now Kotzen Smith, Adrian Smith, and Richie Kotzen. So kind of in that, it was kind of in that flavor. I talked to a manager friend of ours about it. Oh, we need a band name and we need a logo and merch. And I'm like, you're getting way ahead of yourself here, man. It's like the problem with band names is you got to re-educate everybody. Who is it? What is it? And that's an album or two at least. And touring, it's like, wait, these were COVID times. This was 2021 when we were doing it. It's like no one was leaving the house. And I just like the idea of our two names. Just state the obvious. Take all the guesswork out of it. Here's these two guys. Here's the music, and like we started the interview with, I think you hear the pieces of our careers. It's us, our signature sound, and then creating something together that to really identify a sound on album one, and really hone it and fine tune it on album two. That doesn't happen very often. So it's really just a fun, natural, organic process that we have, that we really just try not to overthink it that much.
Yeah, the process is, Dave, I write the songs, Jeff closes the deal. I mean, that sums it up perfectly.
He writes the songs that makes Jeff Scott Soto sing.
And honestly, it's fun. We get in it, and it's kind of this concentrated period of time. It's usually about a month, and sometimes Jeff, we know the Trans-Siberian Orchestra schedule, so we're like, look, we got about 6 weeks, we got to get this done. And sometimes sometimes you need your back against the wall. You need to
Yes.
know there's not a
Yeah.
lot of money and there ain't a lot of time. We got to get this done,
This is what I
And
told Tim early on. I told him how the second album, we were kind of under the gun that we wanted to get it completed and turned in
Sure.
before I started with TSO last year. And it was exactly that. It wasn't that I was under the gun. I was rushing and just, okay, that's good enough. Move on to the next. It was organically happening and sounding so great. And we moved on, and I was able to get everything done on time so we could submit it and get it ready for
Yeah, yeah.
manufacturing, etc. But having that pressure, absolutely, it's kind of a pressure cooker in terms of when that pressure cooker is done, you're going to come up with a beautiful meal. And that's
yeah,
exactly what we came up with this latest album. It was, instead of overthinking and over trying, go back and maybe you should try this, do that. There was none of that. It was a flow that just happened, and it was a runaway train, to be honest. And
What is
that's what I
what
think
is it?
why the results sound like that.
Well, what is interesting here is because you both talk positively about collaboration. Now, for some, that word causes immediate division or sends them running to the hills. But as you said, Jeff, as far as I'm concerned, I work best when I collaborate. And Dave, your quote was, collaboration keeps you young. You've got to be prepared to be open to hear and listen and receive ideas that you wouldn't have come up with yourself. It sounds
right.
simple, but so many people try it and it never works. But you two guys try it and the results are there to see.
I like to think that we're better together. It's that thing, right? It requires, especially when you're coming from two different genres, so to speak, as Jeff and I are, right? We've got vastly similar yet different backgrounds, upbringings, musical influences. And I think the trick is to walk into it and let go of the attitude, well, in Megadeth, we always did it this way. Or for Jeff to come in and say, well, in my Soto band, we always did it this way. Naturally, you're going to refer to a little bit of that because there are some things that you bring in that actually do work, that are productive and positive. But I think that the trick is to walk into a situation and read the room, and kind of go, okay, what are we doing here, and where is sort of the creative impetus coming from, And I think probably in our case, our guitar player Andy Martongelli, he's out of Verona, Italy. He's just a powerhouse and such a force musically, as a writer, as a player. I mean, he's certainly the third Beatle of our trifecta here, and probably for Jeff to come in, not know who Andy is, and trust me and say, "Listen, this guy he's the guy. He's the wingman here. Believe me, he's all good." That was probably the first thing in 2021 is, all right, who's this Andy guy? Like, what's this all about? And David, it's you and me. It's our names on the door. Why? Like, who are these other people? I respected that. I'm introducing those guys into the mix and getting to know the process. And I think probably the first thing was to just let Jeff become comfortable with that. To know, like, yeah, okay, they do bring the goods. It is productive. The first, like we said, the first few tunes that was the acid test. It's like, all right, we got something here, and then to keep going with that. So by the time we walked into album 2, those friendships, relationships, and musical dynamics were already in place. We didn't have to sort of go through that learning curve. So by album 2, when I hit Jeff, literally I was backstage at a little open air concert. Me and Andy were playing north of Rome, and I hit Jeff. I just because we were talking about doing a cover. I just wanted to do a cover song just to
Oh,
stir the
death
pot,
on
kind
two
of freshen it
legs.
up. Yeah, and I love Death on Two Legs because it's the needle drop of Night at the Opera, and of course Bohemian Rhapsody is the hit. It's the most famous one, but for me, Death on Two Legs is the one. Like, that to me is the song. And me and Andy right away go, "Oh my God, Jeff loves Queen. He'll probably say yes, sight unseen." And I hit him, and he said, "Dude, I'd love to." And then it was kind of like, "Hey, not for nothing, to use a Petrelliism, not for nothing." Uh, that's a nice New York thing Al does. "Hey, not for nothing." I said, would you ever want to do a second album? He goes, "Fuck yeah, I'd be totally down." And I mean, it was just like that. And that goes to the other part of it is you don't know unless you ask, I mean, that's just, I think it's, you gotta just, take a chance, and that's how quickly it all just sort of fell into place on album 2 for us.
So there aren't a lot of pluses, really, or benefits to growing older, as we all know. But one, especially for songwriters, is life experience. So on the new album, Unbreakable, you're speaking a lot about your lives. As you say, it's a lot deeper and it's shaped by all of the things that you experience both on and off the road. So in other words, it becomes easier to do these things as you grow older because there's more to draw on.
Yeah, and David was very instrumental on a lot of the lyrics on this record. I mean, when they would send me songs, Andy was also very instrumental on a lot of the melodies. He would do like a mock sing, just a melody idea, and he never said, "I'm married to any of this. It's just something I hear when I'm writing the songs or come up with the riffs." These are the things that just kind of every songwriter goes through. That they have melodies or ideas that sound that they think attribute to the song. And then obviously if the singer comes along and says, "No, I don't like that at all," and writes his own version, I actually welcome that, because not only does it make my job easier, it adds an influence of things to the song or songs that I normally wouldn't have come up with that might have been better than anything I come up with. So from that, I kind of shape and mold based on what Andy sent me. But the same thing with David's lyrics. He'll send me like kind of a foundation that I can draw from. Oh, I love this inspiration. I love the theme. I love where he's going with this. And then it's just kind of completed from there. I move some words around and delete, omit, and add to, etc. And that's how every song was done on this record. There was no, I'm writing 100% of this melody and lyrics, you're writing 100%. It's so collaborative. And I think that's what makes it so special. I think some bands require individuals to be just, the focal point of those songs for them to be what they are. Whereas what we're doing here, it requires us to do it together.
The cover design. So this is in your face. So I like this. It's classic. Is the shield of righteousness. The message here: stay on the right side, and you'll be fine. So in other words, stay with us, guys. This is the music you want to hear. Stay on the right side.
Yeah, I think so. That shield was actually a piece of artwork that was created even around the first album, and we didn't really have a place for it yet. And so with a lot of things in the creative world, the answer is always yes. Sometimes it's yes, but not yet. You know what I mean? And that requires a little bit of maturity to kind of go, great song, not right for this album. Hey, cool piece of artwork. Let's hang on to that and see where that comes around. And as we were, working with our partners there at Rat Pack on this, all of a sudden that whole shield idea came around. There's a couple of ideas that once that one was presented, it was like, wow. And what's interesting about it, what I liked about it, it kind of has this King of the Nighttime World, Kiss Destroyer album cover. Like, the superheroes are punching through, and there's fire around it because, you're blazing into the atmosphere. And I'm actually looking at it over here on the laying there, the package of it. And you're right. It's blazing because it is on the right side. And I think that is you hear it. When Jeff and I talk specifically about the song Unbreakable, because it's a very personal song. The verses are in a first person, I, me. But when it comes to the chorus, it switches the POV to us and we. And Jeff and I both agreed that, it's kind of this we're not going to take it. It's not I'm not going to take it. It's we're not going to take it. Like we're stronger together. It's bigger as a chorus chant as the village town hall speaks out together, there's strength in numbers, that I think that was a really deciding moment that I think helped us with a lot of the lyrics. Judas Priest had this rise up to, you don't have to be old to be wise, and it's kind of a call to action. It's a call to arms. It rallies the whole village together as a team, as a battle cry. And I think I'd rather hear people singing we and us, that's a unifying statement. And I like when music brings people together.
You talked about you studying the entertainment business or the music business right back in those early days. And I thought about that because there was somebody early on in your career at Clear Channel Radio that said to you, Dave, heavy's cool, but it's got to have melody.
Right.
And that is what this has got. This album has from start to the finish. It's really heavy at times, but every track has got melody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I love a good, chunky, heavy riff. I mean, that's just the weight of a great, to me, a great rock song is kind of riff based rather than chord progression based. And I think look, let's start with Black Sabbath, right? Once they started playing Paranoid, Iron Man, these were riffs and they were repetitive, right? It wasn't, the Beatles sang over chord changes. Sabbath played over riffs, and writing a melody, as Jeff will attest, writing a melody over a riff is not easy because the key center changes within a riff. It doesn't just sit, just because you're in E minor, there can be different notes and different things that are going on within that riff that are not necessarily true to E minor, so there's a lot of things that shift. So for singers to sing over top of that, and again, let's just use Ozzy as a reference. I was always shocked how melodic he was. To be able to sing over this stuff is like, where's he coming from? I think Mustaine was like that. Our early records, Killing Is My Business is like, that's a pretty melodic melody for a song about a sniper, and, finding these ways and then, fast forward into what me and Jeff are doing. I mean, look, Jeff's a master at this. He can sing over anything. He can croon ballads. He can sing rock songs. He can sing metal tunes. He sang with one of the most ferocious guitar players in the business. And it's like, how do you put melodies over those notes? There's a lot of notes, yet he did it, So to me, it's if there's and I think back to the lyric writing thing too, is when you're writing a story, that's really what you're doing. You're writing a story. You're not just writing words down for somebody to sing them. You're writing a story, and I think as I would come up with stories here, when I gave him by the time we got him over to Jeff, it's like I really wanted Jeff to have it be relatable, that he's not just singing my story. He's not just singing someone else's story, that he could really personalize it. And you're right. That goes back to our age. It goes back to our experience. And that's what's nice when you're working with guys, from your own field, of your own sort of pedigree, is you speak not only a certain musical language together, but you speak a life language together.
And you summed up Jeff, perfectly when it was a quote I saw of yours, and you said, I'm muscle and melody. And I love the contrast between the two. And contrast we do have in abundance here. There is muscle and there is a lot of melody.
And there's another M. I call it the 3 M's because you have to, the last M is memorable. The songs have to be memorable. You have to listen to it and go, and when you walk away from it, it's still ringing and singing in your head.
Yeah.
And that, to me, if you have the 3 M's, then you have a winning combination as far as I'm concerned.
One of the best then on the album for me, was Poison Tears. Never too late to change a story's end. Great line in that poignant message here. And the track that you wrote and put together whilst you're at a gas station. I'm trying to get that around my head as I was stood up in the supermarket today, filling the car up, thinking, how do you
think of that while you're putting your Twinkies in the cart?
It was a big gas tank, what I mean? But yeah, seriously, me and Andy. And I try not to text and drive, and sometimes just life happens like this, right? Because again, we're deep in this compression of writing. Like we're all it's interesting because Andy's 9 hours ahead of us over in Italy. Me and Jeff are West Coast, and Jeff's up late, so we were kind of working around the clock. All 24 hours were somehow being utilized. But I would wake up the next morning and Jeff's now got a finished vocal. Andy's got an idea. Then now, while it's my, daylight hours, it's time for me to dig in. And I get a lot of inspiration when I'm just driving, just the miles are clicking by. And it just hit me about that. Andy had sent an idea over to me about something, or we were just talking about something, and I went, oh my God, this is perfect. And literally I swiped the card, put the gas in. I'm just like reading off the word. It's just flowing out of me, And that's how my writing sessions go, is all of a sudden, like this record, there was this sort of 3 to 4 week period where me, Jeff, and Andy were just deep in it every day. And we were just grinding. And it wasn't like it was grinding hard work. It was like someone just turned on a faucet. And the three of us, it was just pouring out, and that's how Poison Tears. And I agree, boy. I remember clearly when we were getting the mixes back from Chris Collier. I had my buddy Todd. I said, "Dude, you got to get in the car and listen to this one." And I put it on, and I was just like, "This to me is almost like a lost era of Megadeth. Some era between Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction or something. Some '90s era in there because it had the weight." And I love that 90s era Megadeth. It was radio rock. It was heavy and melodic, right? And the songs had the weight, they had the riffs, and I was going, man, I can't believe how good this song came out. And I was just listening to it. I could hear every one of us. I go, there's Jeff. Yep, that's for sure my contribution to it. And then over here you hear Andy. And Chris Collier is a really great mixer. He was working on a Korn album. He was waiting for Jonathan Davis to come in and sing, and he would work on our mixes. He'd send him over. He goes, I'm just waiting for Jonathan. I don't know. He's not here yet. So he goes, by the way, check this mix out. I'm like, so again, even on his side, it was like this 24-hour music factory. He's whacking mixes over to us, and I'm hearing it. I'm just going, fuck. I don't know how he does it. He gets this great weight on the bottom. And it's not like just the bass guitar is loud. It's a low end weight that just anchors things down, and wraps around everything. He gets these guitars super big, and then right in the middle is Jeff. And it's so hard to get a singer through a wall of guitars. And of course, Jeff's got the right voice for it, that. Yeah, and I think part of it too is. And I'm sorry to talk about you in a third person, Jeff, because you're on the interview. But Jeff's voice
keep it coming. I'm actually loving all of this. Keep it coming.
Jeff's voice doesn't. Some voices, they have the same tone as like a mahogany Gibson Les Paul, and they sit right in the range of a guitar, and it's really hard to get them up out of the mix. And this is, nothing you could do about it other than that's the mixer's job, is to find space, for everything. But it's funny, the combination between me, Andy, and Jeff, and our drummer Paulo, the way he plays. Oh, yeah. Paulo to me is Clive Burr. He's Clive Burr from Iron Maiden. He plays riffs within our riffs. He's really in the song. He's not just back there keeping time while we're chugging away. He's really writing drum patterns and riffs inside of our riffs that in our compositions. And so he's very integrated into it. So it's like you've got these 4 very distinct pillars. And the way Chris Collier got Jeff to come out of the center of the speaker, right? I should do it at you guys, right in the middle, right there. That's really a task. You know what I mean? So it's just, I just sat in the car. I remember I was out in front of a Chipotle, out in front of this Mexican restaurant, with my friend Todd, and just cranking it in the same car I filled the gas up and wrote the song for. I'm now sitting in it, 4 months later going, you fucking believe this, man. This is so good. And I agree. I thought Laura did a great job. That was actually Andy's idea. Jeff and I talked about a couple of singers, and I think Laura was for sure the right mix. She's got the nice, again, depth and darkness and grit to her voice. Yet she can soar up with the Eagles and really rock that with Jeff, Well,
what she does with Burning Witches is actually much higher. So this was actually a bit low for her. I remember David saying that she was saying, "Oh, that's a bit low for me." And you can kind of hear when she's singing the verse, like it's almost like me singing a Barry White part, because
totally.
She had to really kind of like bottom out to get those lower vocals. But then when she takes it up the octave, you can hear that's where she soars.
So tell me, the unexpected. So I mentioned this earlier. The beauty of this album is when you put it on, you think you know what you're going to get, and then something completely different is delivered.
I love that,
and that's what you get with Ghosts. So you've had the full on metal, we've had these more ballad orientated tracks, and then we get Ghosts, and this wonderful intro. Guitar part, the intro to that, which reminded me, and I don't know if anybody else has said this, I was beginning to get a bit of a Richie Blackmore vibe from that.
I would probably agree with that. Andy is such a fantastic, gutsy rock and roll guitar player, but he's also a very educated player. He's he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows all the musicality around it, even though we never talk in sharps and flats and diminished and suspended. We never talk musical terms really between us. Maybe we did a little bit on Death on Two Legs just for some note purposes for Jeff's purposes, but for the most part, it's just it's musician speak. Dude, rad, awesome, killer. Yeah, that rocks. You know what I mean? It's like it's musician talk. Like fan talk almost, right? But when Andy, it was funny on the first Ellefson-Soto record, there was a piece that started with me on bass. I just happened to be in the studio here in town, and I was just chugging, and I said to the engineer John, I said, "Hey, dude, hit the red button, capture this right now." And we did, and I played this circled thing around, and Andy added to it. So on this record, Andy brought up the idea of ghosts, and I thought, you know what? You deserve the spotlight. I'll just kind of come in around you. I'll just play some supporting bass around you and let you be the focus. You deserve a spotlight on this record. And it wasn't just a blazing shredding thing. It's the clean part that offered such a different dynamic. It's kind of the ballad of the album, right? The instrumental, because for one, it's the sorbet, right? It cleanses the palate and sets you up for the punch at the end, and it's nice to have something that was just kind of just intended to be a little musical interlude is really all it was just to
if we ever take this to the stage, then that we can make it 3 times as long. That's my little beer run. I can actually have a little break.
Exactly. Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
You fellas go have a little fun. I'm just going to go backstage and chill a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Then back to Vengeance is back on the full-on metal, and then that leads into another classic for me, which was Snakes and Bastards. Rip me off, I'll be blind. Everybody wants to see you die.
Yeah, that was one of those.
A lot of the titles and lyrics, it would make us all laugh. We would because it was so rude and so attitude and we're so juvenile at times. We felt like 16-year-olds again. Like, that's hilarious. We're getting away with son of a bitch and snakes and bastards, and we're just. It's that angst that we loved when we were growing up. The punk bands and the bands like Fear, etc. That it's that attitude that you kind of fall away from as you get older. As you were saying, we have life experience and wisdom, and this things change and kind of shape where you're going and where you're heading. But this kind of brought us back to those early days, like, where we could get away with a lyric like that. We would get away with just using the F word multiple times in the context of a song. And it was fun and it was funny at the same time.
The end of the album is as strong as it began. Clear messages as well, maybe in some of the lyrics. Is over when I say it's over.
Yes.
And then we get, it starts with a little dream in the dark, the day we built Rome. So there's, in each of these songs, there's little messages, or there's like, oh yeah, I wonder what he was thinking when he was writing this, or is this, going back to when you first began, I was lying there one night, I was 8 years old and I had this dream and this is it. And then it's like, well, people, there's a lot with the old keyboard warriors out there telling you your career's over and whatever, and why are you doing this? And it's now it's over when I say it's over.
Yeah.
So
no, I think you read the room exactly on that. In fact, I remember when Andy and I wrote the music for that. We were in Wembley, and looking out of Alessio's studio of Rogue Recording, you could see they're looking right at the stadium. He had his little Kiss creatures, his little Kiss miniature thing set up, right, a bunch of amps. And I remember, I think it came to me, and then we sang it, and we were laughing. I forgot which one of us came up with it, but we were kind of going back and forth, and it's like, yeah, you know what? It's over when I say it's over. And that was exactly the attitude about it. And it could apply to anything. It could apply to relationships, to careers, to whatever, But
and it kind of does. I'm sorry to cut you off, David, but you sparked something in me that I want to kind of elaborate on. I write in double and sometimes triple entendre. I don't want black and white lyrics that a song like I want to rock and roll all night, party every day. You're not going to misconstrue that with world politics or religion. I love writing within the context of, you think it might be about this, but it's actually about that. But it also could be about that. And that's what I love, especially when David feeds me the first drops of lyrics or themes. I take it to the next level of, okay, instead of making it so obvious, it sounds like I'm so angry at maybe a former bandmate or a former boss, but it actually could pertain to a relationship. It could pertain to a neighbor. It could pertain to a record company, that dealings with the record company. Even a song like Snakes and Bastards. To me, that's our own modern day version of Death on Two Legs. So we have two Death on Two Legs on the record because it is attributed towards someone who's trying to take you down, or even the people that try to take you down when you're on your way up. That it's a given in life and in business, in music and entertainment, that as soon as you get up there, there's always somebody that wants to chip you down and bring you back down to earth. And a song like It's Over When I Say It's Over, it's exactly that statement. It's you're not going to tell me, you're not going to be the dictator of my journey, of my fate. I'm going to tell you where it's going to happen. I'm going to tell you where it begins, where it's going to plateau, and when I'm actually going to step down.
Sure.
And that's exactly what that's about, but in different contexts, not necessarily one context or one theme or one person. So that's what I love about the lyrics on this record. It pretty much the way I write in general. I always write with double meanings. That I wrote a song years ago, but sound like I was in a troubled relationship with this girl who drove me crazy and just wants to basically rip out my heart and make me cry. And the lyrics were actually written about my dog. So so you never know what they're about until, and that's the thing. You can actually make your own personal idea of what those lyrics mean to you. You can attribute that to something that happened in your life, pertained to your life, and that's what I try to do. I want it to be not just about me, not just about David. I want it to be about us, about everybody gets their own version of that book when they read it.
And you don't need to add anything. Really, I think to the comment that Chris Collier said when he mixed it, and he just said, "You guys come up with the goods."
Yeah, he said that. He said, he goes, I got on the phone with him, and he said, he goes, yeah, you guys really, you stepped it up. Like, you really brought your A game on this. And he goes, look, I already liked the last record. I was a fan. He goes, this one, you guys really, you brought the goods. And that really was a compliment, especially from someone inside who's, who knows how we work. He hears it all when he pushes the faders up and can hear all the performances and everything. And and with Rat Pack, it's a really been a great team. It's not easy to find a label and a team, because it's a team. It's all. I remember years ago we had a manager. Megadeth was managed by Doc McGee, and his Doc's partner Doug Thaler. He came over to my apartment, and me and Dave were playing him some songs, and he had that conversation. Hey, it's a team. You play bass, he plays guitar, I manage, the agent books the shows. It's a team, and then he kind of used the baseball analogy. Guy pitches, catches. There's a first baseman. We need some outfielders, and that's when I really put it together. I'm like, God, you're right. That is what it is. And that was 1989 or no, 88 actually. That was like, I don't know, like December of 1988 that I got that sort of mentored talk, from him, from a superior, and I took it and I look at that like with all of it. It's like we've all got a role inside of the band. We bring Chris in to mix it. We deliver it to Joe. He puts it out. So we sit here and talk to you about it all this time later. And honestly, it's fun to have these conversations like this, Tim, because we get to go back down, the process again. And
Sure.
Thank God the good Lord wired us that any difficult times in our lives, they reduce over time. And all the good things always get sweeter. It's just, I've noticed that that's one of my life lessons, is that this too shall pass, whatever the hard times are. There's always lessons from them. And I think the fact that we can take those things and wrap them into albums, we can wrap them into lyrics, we can, especially on this, we can embody a lot of stuff. We're different people than we were just even a couple years ago, 3 years ago from the last record. So we've got, new stories. And really, people go, when are you going to do a new album? It's like, I don't know, whenever we got something to say, because we're not under a deadline of a contract. When you're younger, you're under contracts. You need to get, music into the machine. And it's really great, the pacing that we have here to be able to, when we get stories, we can record them, and then those stories make up an album.
There are millions of collaborations out there, supergroups, collaborations, but metal and rock fans, as you said, they aren't stupid. They'll know if it's real, but there's no doubt that this is real. So the big job is to get it out there and make sure people see it and hear it, because the volume of product is insane. That comes out weekly, monthly. So, it's a job in itself, isn't it? I think you've said, isn't it? You've got the music business bit is done. That is the recording of the record. Now we're in the entertainment business.
Right. Get it on the stage, take it out to the people, Yeah.
But Tim, doing a second album, to me and to us, is our proof that it's real. It's showing people that it wasn't just a flash in the pan, or if it sticks to the wall, we'll continue with it. But even more so, a second record that's stronger, or is as strong or stronger than the first, that's when you know it's real. You can just dish out a new album for the sake of saying, well, let's try again, and maybe it's not what it should have been or what it could have been. This album exceeds, it goes past anything we actually were possibly even thinking that the record was going to be. Of course, we were excited when we were doing it, but especially an engineer like Chris Collier, he brought the sounds to life. He brought the mixes to life. And it gave me a whole different energy and different enthusiasm when I heard the results, because now it's up to the people to resonate with it. It's up to them to say, I want to see this live. It's up to them to say, this needs to be taken to the next level, and that's obviously on the stage. And until that point, we've discussed this. It's so easy to say, you know what, let's pack up the station wagon. We can sleep on couches. We can eat macaroni and cheese and ramen and survive on the road like we did in our 20s. But David and I, we've already done that and then some. It's kind of hard to go from the arenas and the stadiums back down to the trenches, which is, there's nothing wrong with it, and we're willing to do it to a degree. We're not going to go out there and play in front of 20 people a night until we're playing arenas again with this band. But on the other hand, we do have the experience of knowing how to get it to that level, and hopefully when and if we do get it to that, that's when we're going to now turn it into the live entity that it deserves.
It'd be a good festival act.
Absolutely,
for next year.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we can at least start at that level, because again, we have enough weight between our two names, and that being the marquee name of the band, that alone will get people saying, I know who that is, and I know who that is, but now prove it to us. And then that's where we step up and do what we do.
Yeah. You're not negative people, are you? I like the fact that you said that some people think that we're a bit too positive and happy.
Life is too short, especially at this point of our lives and at our ages. It's too short to dwell on the negative, or to just go pissing and moaning about everything that's happened, that should have happened, etc. At this point, you take all the negatives and you turn them into positives, because from that, you're going to have a result like we have with this record, and even with our relationship together.
Sure. Just a couple of things just before you close. You performed, David, back to the beginning. You were there at Ozzy's final show. I mean, you knew him from way back. You did Ozfest in 98 before doing a tour of, I think, South America. And so you got to hang out socially with Ozzy. And Billy Morrison was there as well, from the Cult and Billy Idol. I mean, it was an incredible day. What was it like? What was the atmosphere like from a musician's point of view?
Dave has a great answer for this. I love it. I know where Dave is going to answer this, because I've already heard this answer, and it's fantastic.
I hope I remember the answer. Shit, no,
the way you kind of corralled the day, it was such an amazing response to. I felt like I was there when David replied to that exact question a few times already.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was exactly as you saw it online, exactly as it was on the live stream. It felt like that. And, it's when you're there for celebrating someone's life, which is what it was. Sure. It was a celebration of life. We knew the peril that Ozzy was facing with his illness. They had been very transparent about that. So, but to know that this was going to be the last time we see Ozzy with his band, with both of his bands, and with Black Sabbath. The fact that I love the fact that with Black Sabbath, they went back and they got the OGs, all four of the original guys, to be back in the room together. They started with those four, they ended with those four. I thought that's the way it's done. They set a new gold standard of how to do a farewell,
Absolutely.
how to do that, which is great. Also, I think when you're there, as a charity,
Yeah.
where all men are equal, all men and women are equal backstage on the stage. Clearly Black Sabbath and Ozzy were the headliners. Quite honestly, the songs were the headliners. Those
Yeah.
songs were bigger than all of us, and are going to live beyond all of us, as well as our own songs. So suddenly there's no. I thought I was headlining. Where's my limo? Where's my dressing room? All these kind
Yeah.
of things that can happen. When you get a lot of, the big leaguers in the same room together. There was none of that. I mean, and everybody was such a fan of everybody else, and we're all friends. We
Yeah,
all grew up together.
that's the line I was
Um,
waiting for.
yeah, we're all friends together. We all shared the same record collection together. To talk to Guns N' Roses about their choice of Sabbath tunes, to bro down with Pantera and Rival Sons and Black Sabbath, and and Steven Tyler shows up. It's like, Steven's just a member amongst members. He's just another singer on the stage. You know what I mean? It's like, this guy's one of the most famous people here in the place. And next thing you know, a Rolling Stones out on stage. You're like, geez, it's like, it just doesn't stop coming. And everybody was just a member amongst members, and that, I've never been part of something like that. That was that awesome. I mean, look, when we did the Big Four, to Metallica's credit, they made it feel like that too. They made it
Mm,
feel like we were all together. We were all in it together. We were all brothers who grew up, and we were all there, as
Sure.
one. They I've had that experience with them, and again, Metallica, they know what they're doing,
it was a family
and they
affair. Yeah.
yeah, and the same thing happened. I guess because we were there for almost a week doing the rehearsals, we were there hanging out. People from the A group would come see the B group, and we'd all hang out together and sit and bullshit and watch each other practice, because we were all going, like, I remember Robert Trujillo was there, when I was doing Sweet Leaf, and it's like he played with Ozzy, and I'm going, fuck. I was kind of looking at him like, is this right? This is, it's like, finally, fuck it. I got to grab a pick. I'm a pick player. Why am I trying to play like geezer? Give me a freaking pick. I'm David Ellefson. This is how I do it. And that's what they want. They don't want you to be somebody else. They want you to be you, and so it was just a lot of great, a lot of these guys had played with, Adam Wakeman, Mike Borden, Rudy Sarzo. These guys had played with Ozzy and Sabbath and these guys, but everybody was there, to just be as one. And that's, no matter how we go in, we come out as one voice. And I thought that was a beautiful thing.
And you know what? It was the perfect ending to the perfect day. Was the family moment
Yeah.
backstage when you saw Kelly and Sid getting engaged, and Ozzy's razor sharp where you can, I can't believe you think you're marrying my daughter.
I know. Yeah, no,
it was just
She blocked David from getting his photo with Ozzy. The last
I
photo he
know.
could
I
have
was
taken with
literally,
Ozzy.
he waved me over, and he looked great. He was just beaming after the show. He saw me, waved me over. We're talking for a couple of seconds, for, I don't know, a few not minutes, because everybody wants a piece of the guy, So I was just him, just talking very kindly as performers who had just done a gig together. You know what I mean? It was like, hey man, good set. It was really cool. It was great. You pulled that. It was great. You nailed it. You really did a good job. And then next to Jack's like, all right, everybody, he's whistling. Everybody keep it down. And it's like, oh, fuck, now what's going on? Next thing you know, Sid drops to his knee. There's the proposal. It was just one just unbelievable gold nugget after another, falling out of the sky on that one. And it was, yeah, it was just, it was just really was a surreal thing to be part of.
And lastly, you've got to ask, as you're here, Megadeth and the announcement of the final album and the goodbye tour. So was it a shock to you when you heard this, or was it something that you'd heard a rumor that, well, I think that he's going to wind it all up and whatever?
Now I knew about it. I mean, obviously, I'm in the business, so I knew about it. Which it was a little shocking. I've known Dave as a workhorse. As all things, good, bad, or indifferent about Dave is he's a pretty fucking tough mule, man. I mean, he's gotten out there and sang and played despite all the odds, and I will give him that. He definitely never backed down to a challenge. So, but I remember there was a comment some years ago. We were playing a festival in Mexico, and his wife, Pam, had looked over at me, and with him sitting right next to him, goes, the old horse is slowing down. You know what I mean? And we were out. It was a big gig. It was the Judas Priest and the Scorpions. It was one of those big, the man. Everybody's sitting there, and you just kind of. And I remember when she said it, it was kind of like, we are getting up there a little bit, but then I look at the Scorpions and fucking Rudolph Schenker, that guy comes up and hugs you like a rock'em sock'em robot. You're like, the fuck did they put in the water at his house? This guy's, well into his 70s is like, like, Jesus, man, these Scorpions are like impenetrable. They're strong. You're like Iron Man. So it is what it is, so I don't know, like I haven't talked to Dave now in 4 years, so I have no idea the reason or anything about it other than they made their announcement.
What do you think would happen? What do you think would occur if you just picked up the phone and phoned him?
Well, even if I have his number, I don't know. He might have changed his number, but since I talked to him. But yeah, I mean, look, no, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I mean, listen, it's look. He removed me from the group, so it's not my place to call him to go back, right? I put it out there. I did something on my podcast. I said, look, I floated it out there. Said, hey, look, if it were to be, I'd be up for it. I think it'd be cool. Having just watched what happened in Birmingham, where everybody got together, everybody not only did we get to say goodbye to them, they got to say goodbye to us, and I think that's just as important. Is that. Dave's closing up shop on Megadeth, and he's doing it for him, obviously, for his reasons. I think in the perfect world, there would be at least a moment where maybe some of, if not all of the rest of us got a chance to say goodbye as well, and that's how I think that was that's a takeaway from Birmingham, is that there's a moment for everybody to just, put everything aside and go, you know what? That was a fucking good run, man. And take the final bow together on some level.
And I'm sorry, I have to interject here. I'm sorry. I absolutely agree with you, David, that it would be a lovely way for it to end or go out is to have the surviving members of this legendary band all together, at least for one more hurrah. But as far as I'm concerned, Megadeth, you guys are the Joe Perry and Steven Tyler of this band. And to end this whole legacy without one or the other, to me, is wrong. And I'll put it right here. You can clickbait and blabbermouth it all you want. Dave Mustaine, you need to call David Ellefson, and you need to put him as part of the end. If this is truly the end, and you're calling it a wrap, you need to include David at some point, even if it's one show, one song, something like that. To me, that's the true closure. That's the real way to actually close the book on Megadeth. They have to at least include David, to include Chris Poland and all the others, Jeff Young, all the others that have been involved. That to me would be the ultimate farewells, sayonara. It's all of the above. That needs to happen as far as I'm concerned. You need to get the Lennon and McCartney, the Joe Perry and the Steven Tyler of this band together for one final hurrah. That's how I see it.
Well, that was Dave Ellefson and Jeff Scott-Soto. The album is Unbreakable, and it is out now. And if you haven't heard it, then do, because it's a real powerhouse of a performance from all that were involved in the project. Jeff's vocals, as ever, operating on a level that few can match. Well, that is it for now. Coming up on the next few shows, we're going back to the classic era of the early 70s to check in with two bands returning to prominence with new albums this next, 4 or 5 weeks, beginning with Atomic Rooster, who are back with a great new album reminiscent of their 70s heyday. It is a first full studio album for them in over 4 decades. Steve Bolton, who joined the band back in 71, is in situ and guiding the band, and will introduce a new generation of Roosters, including Paul Everett, who plays the drums, and he is also on the show. And to follow that, John Lees of Barclay James Harvest. He, remember, one of the founders who has been in the band since day one back in 1966. He's going to join me to look at their new album, which is out in October, and discuss what future plans they have. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to having your company again on the next edition of the show. If you want to get in touch, don't forget you can via the website at www.therockandbluesexperience.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and all other social channels. Till then, until next time, from me, Tim Cable, goodbye for now.